the song itself becomes a career. It's almost like that song itself is a full on business.
Right.
Because it produces so much for that artist. So, you know, man, if you were to ever...
Bro, that's a lottery,
right,
man. That's a songwriter's lottery right there, man.
Bro, that would be incredible.
What up? It's Dramos, and this is the recap, of course, as I do each and every week, breaking down some of the biggest headlines from this last week. Helping me do so, my guests are a two-time Grammy-nominated production duo known as Coast City, so they'll be hopping on in just a little bit to help me break down some of the biggest headlines from this last week. But first, man, let's get into the BS from this last week. Man, so this last week we had two gubernatorial races whose results should scare the crap out of Democrats around this country. You see, as these elections are essentially acting as a preview as to what we can expect for next year's gubernatorial race and, of course, the presidential race in 2024. To sum it up, basically, Republican candidate Glenn Youngkin won Virginia, which was a state that Biden won during his last election just last year. And in the great state of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, Democrat, barely won re-election in a state that should have been an easy win for the Democrats. And I feel like Vice News had a headline that really just captured this moment. They said, quote, Democrats should be terrified after last night's election results. I agree. Now let's talk about Biden as his popularity continues to tank and his inability to rally voters in states like Virginia, where he just won, proves that even people who traditionally vote blue, or at least did just a few months ago, are growing tired of the Democrats' nonsense. And how could they not be? You know, the Democrats, they find themselves in like this similar position to what many popular kids have to face, you know, post high school. You know, the types of people I'm talking about. They're like the meatheads who, you know, once ruled the school with their hyper masculinity, only to be smacked upside the head by life when they realize that in adulthood, people are no longer impressed by the fact that you can crush a beer can with your head, and being the captain of your high school football team, that actually bears no weight in the real world. Or also, for example, the stuck-up cheerleader type, right? We all know her. You know, the one that developed early and now has to come to the harsh realization that as her looks fade, she needs to learn how to grow personality, right? You see, those archetypes I just described are essentially the modern-day Democratic Party, right? Like, they rode this wave of selling us, you know, the anybody but Trump dream, right? And they even like sprinkled in, you know, some false promises along the way. And we bought into it, right? Like, we elected them the prom king and queen and then stood around in a circle as they had their dance, cheering as if this moment actually meant something in the grand scheme of life, right? And sadly, much like our high school jocks and cheerleaders, the Dems, they seem to have peaked early, right? Like, leaving us with nothing more than the memories of the glory days that were once filled with so much promise, and now the harsh reminder that their best days are behind them, you know, as the reality of things like early male pattern balding begins to set in, followed up by the classic dad bod, metaphorically, of course. Now, while Democrats' failure to basically do anything is incredibly disappointing, what makes all of this just downright scary is the fact that we have no foreseeable choice, right? Like, on one hand, you have a political party in the Republicans who would rather, you know, run on conspiracy theories rather than actual policy. And then on the other hand, you have a bunch of cowards who refuse to honor the promises they've made to their base. So what is the solution, you might be asking yourself? And honestly, hell if I know. All I can say is the Democrats better get it together, or they're going to have a really terrible time at the reunion in 2024. Now, got that off my chest. Let's lighten things up a bit as we bring on today's guest to get into some more current events. Helping me break it all down, my guests this week are a 2-time Grammy-nominated production duo from Puerto Rico. The latest single, XO, is available everywhere right now. Coast City, how you guys feeling?
Oh, it was good. It was good. Thanks for having us.
With that introduction, bro, I got a
Listen, you know I gotta slide Puerto Rico into there, and especially I want to quickly make a side note because if I'm not mistaken, one of y'all is from Bayamón and one of you guys is from Fajardo, right?
Fajardo.
Yeah.
Okay,
Man.
so my dad is born and raised in Bayamón. And,
oh, really?
And Fajardo's on my list of places that like I want to own a home one day. So you guys are kind of checking all the boxes right now.
Well, that's you and I.
Yeah,
I'd like to have a little house out there too. It's
absolutely. I think it's a hidden secret of the island right now.
It really is, bro.
Yeah.
Bayamón, man. That's where I grew up, man. I appreciate you all like saying Puerto Rico also.
See, yeah, you gotta you gotta say it the right way. I gotta come correct on here, you know.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I mean, we'll get into all things Puerto Rico, I'm sure, at some point. But let's kind of touch base a little bit with some current events, if that's cool with y'all. I want to get you guys' perspective on some things.
Let's go.
So. We're coming out of Halloween, and it seems like people are trying to throw in Christmas earlier and earlier than ever, like this year, right?
No, I ain't gonna lie today. Okay, so I got 2 boys, right?
Yeah.
Straight up on the way to the school, they're like, Papi, can you play some Jingle Bells? I'm ready. It's like it's getting pushed everywhere.
Yeah.
I want to say Mariah Carey is partially to blame for this because she's kind of been, A, that song is always everywhere, but B, she set it off with that little like internet meme that she's been going around with.
Right.
Bro, how amazing would it like to strike a song like that? You know, like
bro, that's what I wanted to ask you guys because think about this, man. Like, first of all, I think it's funny a bar in Texas actually banned All I Want from Christmas from Mariah Carey from getting played in their bar. Yeah, it's gotten that bad that some people are that sick of it. But bro, can you imagine having written a song that like every single year, a decade later, keeps charting at #1, like every single year you can count on that?
Yeah, you know, it's crazy because, you know, in the publishing world, that's called evergreens. You know, those type of songs are called evergreens, you know, and the song itself becomes a career. It's almost like that song itself is a full-on business. Right. Because it produces so much for that artist. So, you know, man, if we were to ever...
Bro, that's a lottery,
right?
Man. That's a songwriter's lottery right there, man.
Bro, that would be incredible, man.
I mean, I'll take mi burrito sabanero. You know?
I like that one, but I mean, as songwriters, they're like you can't even try to recreate that, right? It just kind of has to happen. Like that, like a song like that is just kind of lightning in a bottle. It feels like. I was
working with this artist the other day, and we recorded this Christmas song, and this was already like almost 2 months ago. I'm like, dang, you can start it early. But the Christmas song was really dope. And I'm like, man, this has like a potential to be like a classic, you know? I mean, obviously, you know, All I Want for Christmas, that's just, again, that's a lottery, man. But yeah, I think, you know, you thrive and, you know, like for something like that, you know, you always aim high. And I think that's just like a dream for somebody to have that scenario, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it really is crazy to think about. Man, I would love to know, first of all, how much money she still makes off of that. Like, I just want to see one of them checks. You know, I just want to know. You know what I mean?
We all want to know.
We all want to know. Well, listen, I mean, let's keep it on music because obviously music oftentimes moves in cycles, right? Like, you know, at one point, like, you know, this vintage sound from the 90s, or even fashion is like that too, where like you saw 90s style coming back and things like that. I mean, we're seeing this whole like Y2K movement happening right now. I mean, you know, like people like Avril Lavigne are like back in the spotlight.
Well, you saw that she just signed with
Travis Barker.
Travis Barker, man. Good for her. I mean, man. I was so happy to see that post. I'm not gonna lie.
Right. Well, it's dope, right, to see people kind of, you know, being able to keep doing the things that they love and finding like, you know, that love back from a newer generation. But like, I feel like the Y2K era is weird because it was like a lot of this kind of really like manufactured bubblegum pop to a degree. You know, I'm curious your guys' thoughts. I mean, your musicians, your producers, your thoughts on just that era of music as we kind of see it gain some notoriety right now.
Listen, we're from Puerto Rico, but we actually grew up in Orlando, Florida, right? So when you talk about that era, like we were in the Mecca, in the middle, in the eye of the storm. You know what I'm saying? We worked with like Transcon, you know, who like we're friends with, you know, NSYNC and Backstreet and LFO and Old Town. One of the guys from Old Town is one of our closest friends, Eric Estrada, who actually co-writes a lot of our stuff with us.
Oh, dope.
So we're very familiar with that era and that time, you know, and honestly, man, I don't know how people view it, not being in the middle of the storm like we were, man. But to us, it was a special thing to be so close to what was going on in town, you know, like because we were so young, like we actually enjoyed that movement because we were part of it, and we used to open up for some of these artists, and I think it's great, man, that is the full circle, you know, because I've seen a lot of these artists again that are from that era that were crazy successful and that hit so many speed bumps along the way. Right. Because, you know, everybody evolves, and you know, like you lose fans, so it's just really cool for you to see that wave again, and for these like groups to be torn again, and for, you know, I think it's amazing, man.
Yeah, you know, it's something interesting that you say, because I remember in Puerto Rico, right, when reggaeton, you know, started kicking underground, le decían underground, right?
Yeah.
The salseros. The salseros would go, eso no es música, eso es una basura, eso es una porquería, eso no son músicos. Tú sabes, I remember when the labels used to like, would look at the urban stuff and be like, oh, you know that ain't cool. Right. And I'm not trying to compare reggaeton and urban with that pop, but you know, I think every style has its own way of being produced, right? And every genre has its thing. And I'm speaking of this as a producer. You know, like it's easy to say, you know what, reggaeton eso fácil hacer. Yeah. Oh yeah, if it is, then go ahead and do a track to see how it sounds, because I'm sure your track is gonna sound pretty. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think our approach has always been with music. Has always been appreciating, you know, what people do put in, you know, and so
I think it got categorized in that like super bubblegum, you know, type pop category, but
although there are some songs.
No, that's what I'm saying. There's just an art to what they did, like it or not. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like that's it. You know, you can't really hate on that. So
yeah, I think to your point, it's easy for a lot of people to write it off like anybody could do it, but it obviously is a level of expertise, a level like your ear alone, you know what I mean, and being able to capture sort of different, you know, energy as far as the artist goes and to their strengths. I mean, I am curious though, because I've heard I think Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak, when they were talking about their project that they came together, right? And Anderson was talking about how Bruno is just like a machine where he just knows like, okay, I put these chords together, it's going to be a hit. We do this song structure, blah, blah, blah. Where Anderson is a lot more just going with the flow and kind of trying to feel things out. For you guys as producers, do you ever get stuck in this box of like, you know, the formula kind of to success to a degree? Is it hard to not get trapped in kind of just copy and pasting that all the time?
You know, for our music, we definitely do not take the approach of like, let's make a hit. We're like, our approach has always been very genuine in the sense like, yo, let's make a song that that's birthed out of our hearts, you know, like, oh yeah, I don't want to get too cheesy, right? But what I'm trying to say is like, it comes from a very genuine point. In fact, even like, for example, we were just rehearsing with our band, right? And at times, right, I'm playing, and then John, he catches a mistake here or there, right, from the musician. And he looks at me, he's like, Danny, like, I already know I caught it. A lot of times I let it slide, and I wait for the right moment to make that correction. So where am I trying to get to with this is that, we're very genuine in the way that we approach music, and we really let it go by the vibes, you know, because sometimes it's not right to just like correct something there, or the same way it's not right to produce, at least for us in our music, we're not intentional in that way. We kind of let it, you know.
Well, I think I think that's the reason Coast City was born, because we work with a lot of different artists, right? And so when you work with other writers and are writing for another artist, then you're already kind of trying to visualize exactly what they would do, which puts you in somewhat of a format, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So then Coast City was just our outlet to not have to think that way, right? Like we're going into like Coast City songs without any restrictions or mentality. It was just like a passion project for us to be able to sleep better at night. And it just so happens that you know, 4 years later we're still here and coming out with a third album, and you know what I'm saying. So for our own music, like we definitely try not to put boundaries and just let the heart and mind run wild.
That's dope. I love that. I mean, and it's definitely a blessing to have that freedom, you know what I mean, to do a project like that where you can just kind of do it for the love, and you know, obviously people are messing with it, but also just being able to start it from a pure place. You know, I think that's really dope. I mean, so last story I kind of want to get you guys' perspective on, because we're talking about things from the past. We're talking about working with other people. Did you guys catch the Michael Jordan and the Bulls documentary, The Last Dance, that came out last year?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So legendary, right? But that seems to have like unlocked a lot of bad memories for certain people. Scottie Pippen apparently being one of them.
Yeah.
Now he's in his book right now that just came out, and he basically just goes off on Jordan, calling him selfish, ungrateful for his teammates, saying they were never close and probably never will be. But you guys, you have worked with a lot of people that some would consider the greats, you know what I'm saying? I mean, people like Luis Fonsi, even like legends like that, you know, in this genre. Do you kind of feel like when it comes to somebody's greatness like that, you kind of got to cut them a little bit of slack to kind of have their moment? You know what I mean? Like, and everybody kind of has to play their roles, but it's got to be tough, I'm sure, working with somebody who knows that they're the essentially like Jordan, and also trying to rise to their level of greatness, I guess.
Man, I mean, I think for me personally, all right, I think you gauge everybody, right, like different, and when I walk into a room and I'm working with the top, you know, tier artists, obviously, you know, you want to show that respect, right? You know, they're at that place. They've collected so many, you know, accolades and whatever, so they deserve that. But I don't think, you know, I feel like at the end of the day, right, like I want to feel like I'm at the same level, right? When we're at a working level, you know, like, and just respect it back the same way, right?
Sure.
But I mean, I don't know, man. I think I just think everybody's different, man. From Luis Fonsi to, you know, Christina Aguilera or Beyonce. I'm naming some of the big, you know, ones that we, you know, had the pleasure to work with. And I don't think we're definitely ones to like get stepped on just because you're at a high level, you know what I'm saying? I don't think we'll ever allow that, but I don't know, man. I mean, we definitely have a lot of self-worth, you know, and but you just read the room, you know what I'm saying? But we've been fortunate enough where a lot of those big, great artists that I just mentioned are actually some of the most humble ones that I've ever had the chance to work with, you know? Like, it's pretty impressive, actually. Some of the biggest names we've been able to work with are the coolest, man. They're, you know? So, I mean, I don't know. What's your take on?
No. I mean, I think, bro. I mean, I personally, on that same note, like when I work with an artist, right? I want them to succeed. I want them to like, hey, you know, they call me because they have a need. They're lacking something. They're calling me so I can add that so that they can continue and succeed in their career, you know? So I actually, hey, listen, at the end of the day, you know, it's their career, ¿me entiendes? Like it's, if they want to be an egomaniac, you know, after that, you know, it's up to them. Pero there's a reason why they're calling us, you know, and it's to fulfill a need, and and we're definitely team players. You know?
I think it's important to know how to play your role, right?
Right.
We do a lot of different roles, you know, from producing to writing to musical directing. So I think I think it's very important since you to know how to play your role. And when you're working with a big artist, sometimes you're there, right, because of them, and they're really have the spotlight. They have all the attention, you know what I'm saying? And that's not because they're egomaniacs, but that's you know, so you're not trying to take that spotlight, you know.
Yeah, it comes along with.
I think it just goes with whatever situation and whatever role you got called to play.
Right.
You gotta be aware of what you're.
Where you're supporting.
Yeah.
It's like it is like basketball.
Yeah.
You know, not everybody can be the point guard. Not everybody can be the forward. You know what I'm saying? You just gotta play your role, and allow that to happen. You know, a lot of times if they. Like, for example, you know, Cold City, right? John is the lead singer. You know what I'm saying? John and I enjoy seeing him doing his thing and me playing the keyboard and us doing music together. And I love my role and there are times that I come up and I step up and I do my thing, you know, but we really, you know, we're definitely team players, you know, and we understand how to win the game, you know?
Right. And I think obviously that's very difficult for certain people. I think Scottie Pippen, who is great in his own right, still has an issue with understanding that Jordan just is the greatest. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing you can do about that. I mean, but I do want to ask this last thing, and then we'll get into what you guys are working on. Would you rather be like Michael Jordan, where you have all the accolades, right? You are considered the greatest of all time. Nobody can question anything. But it's been like a very lonely road where you basically have nobody who actually genuinely messes with you on a personal level? Or would you rather be maybe somebody who is, you know, maybe still great, but not that top tier person, doesn't have as many accolades, but you have kind of that crew around you, that friend group, you know, you're well liked by people?
I don't know, man, because, I mean, is it a fact that, I mean, I've seen Jordan a few times, man. I see him with a crew, man. He looked like, he was just golfing with my brother the other day. So I don't know, man. That's a tough question. I mean, I'll take MJ all day.
Right.
I mean, but I don't know, man. Yeah, because I really don't know. Obviously you hear so many sides of the story.
Sure.
Of him, you know, being so hard. But I think it just depends how you read it, man. I think you know, he's just all the greats. You hear that about Kobe, you know what I'm saying?
Right, I was going to say Kobe, you hear that a lot about too, yeah.
You know, his team, and I think that's just he's just really about that tough love, and you know, and obviously in sports, it's a whole different type of dynamic, man.
Right,
you know?
right.
But to have a brand like MJ that's touched and is going to continue touching generations for generations, you know, I'll take that, man, all day. Right. And one, you know,
his legacy.
Then you gotta look beyond some of those bad things that we're hearing. I don't know. You know,
I mean, it's tough because if you're striving for greatness, obviously you're gonna kind of fall short in other aspects of your life. You know what I'm saying? Like even with what you guys do, you're working a lot. I'm sure you're in the studio a lot. You have to dedicate a lot of your time and effort towards your craft, right? So maybe you're not going to have as much time to kick it with friends and things like that. You know what I mean? So there's that balancing act that happens with anybody who's striving for greatness in their field.
Yeah, man. I think that's just life, right? That's just that double-edged sword of being on the top of the hill. You know, look at LeBron. Look at you know, Michael Jackson. You know what I'm saying? It's everybody always try to knock that person off the top, and MJ is the top of the top of the top of the top. So, you know.
And what he did to the sport, I mean, was incredible, you know. I remember studying on him, you know, back in school, you know. He was one of the first artists to athletes to bring $40 billion to you know what I'm saying, to be recognized in China. One of the first athletes to go international, you know. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, definitely the GOAT. And you know, Scottie Pippen just has to be, in my opinion, he's just be happy he was able to be along for that ride.
Real straight up.
I love Scottie too, man. I was
me too. It's just crazy. So I mean, all right, let's get into your guys' music. I wanna talk about that. So I've been checking it. I'm really into it. It's kind of like a lot of it kind of gives me this feel of like R&B with like this electronic fusion sound that I think is really dope. I mean, kind of talk to me about how you guys kind of arrived at this point, I guess, from the beginning of it, you know, because I know that you both are from Puerto Rico, but you actually apparently didn't even meet in Puerto Rico. You met in Orlando, right?
Yeah.
We met in Miami.
Yeah, we actually, I was already living in Miami. And basically at that time, I was, I had my solo career and I had a few records out as a solo artist. And I had this specific show in Orlando and needed a band for my new album, you know, and that promoter of that show put me in contact with Danny, you know, and Danny put my band together. And basically, to make a super long story short, we haven't stopped working ever since. You know, we've been on stage ever since. That musician-artist relationship turned into a production relationship, you know, and through the years. I started noticing the potential of what Danny was doing in the studio. And yeah, man, and we started working. And when I started working on my third solo album, I invited Danny to write and produce, right? And basically that turned into the first Coast City album, because my third album was gonna be called Coast City. Yeah. But at that point, man, I was just like wanting to rebrand myself. The music was changing. I needed I was dying to for a reason to press that reset button, you know. And again, we were doing so much stuff together. I've always loved collaborating. I've always loved being in groups and being able to bounce ideas and not have that full weight on my shoulders. And I've always loved the dynamic of the Neptunes, for example, you know, that it's a perfect balance of studio life and stage life, you know. They're the artists, they're well respected as artists, but they're super well respected as producers. And I feel that was a great formula for Danny and I. It was very credible because it's what we do. And yeah, so I basically was like, yo, D, let's just, you know, join the ride, let's do this together as Coast City. And then 4 years later, you know, we're here.
That's dope. I mean, well, talk to me about the writing process a little bit, because you guys have obviously produced a wide variety of music, right? So what is the process then when you sit down and say, okay, this is going to be a Coast City record? How does it usually kind of start? Is there a bit of a formula, or, you know, just kind of how you guys normally do things?
Yeah, we, you know, there's been instances, you know, times that I can't say instances. There's been times that we actually get together and we actually start writing. We're like, all right, this is a Coast City camp, and we're gonna write Coast City, right? Right. And then there's been times that we're working on a project and we're like, oh damn, hold up, we might want to keep this one, you know? Right. So and there's been times that I just sent out a track to John. He listens to it. He's like, all right, cool. I think, you know, I'm going to write something to it. And that's really how EXO, which is the single that we just released, came about. During COVID, you know, everybody got locked into their studio and started working on stuff. And EXO was one of the first tracks that I did during our lockdown, you know, and I sent it to John, and he wrote on it. And to make the story short, you know, then it became the first song of this EP.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times where there's times where like you said, we write for Coast City, and there's a lot of songs that end up a Coast City song, but we don't know at the moment that they're Coast City songs. You know, we're just writing, and we might send it out and try to pitch it, and then months pass, and you know, we go back to it, and I'll send it to Danny, like yo bro, whatever happened to this song, I think we could twist this, I think this fits on the new album, you know what I'm saying? So I think there's a lot of times too where we don't even know at the moment that we're creating a Coast City song.
For sure.
I want to ask you guys about Puerto Rico a little bit, because I think it's just so incredible to me when you look at historically how many amazing musicians have come out of such a small island, you know? I mean, for you guys being from there, I mean, you know a lot of these artists personally. What do you think it is? Why has this become such an incredible hub for game-changing artists in music, essentially?
Yeah. You know, that's interesting, but that's a really deep question, honestly, because it stems from how Puerto Ricans have had access maybe to more information been to some of our neighboring islands, you know, or other Latin American countries, you know, like we've been exposed to more music. We've traveled maybe more, or like, you know, there was this surge of Puerto Ricans that went to New York, you know. I don't know who I don't know what, you know, your parents are from, but you know, there's a lot of Puerto Ricans in New York, obviously.
That's where my mom's from.
There you go. In the 40s, 50s, 60s, you know, my grandparents, from Fajardo, they went to New York and then they came back to Fajardo, you know. So so I think the fact that Puerto Ricans had access to information earlier has given us more knowledge, you know, in the arts, you know, and has really broadened our spectrum and our palette, you know, of sounds and genres. So I think that has greatly impacted the Puerto Rican musician. But on that same note, our heritage, right? Nosotros somos taínos, somos negros, somos españoles. Toda esa influencia, those influences of the Black culture, of the, you know, Taíno, Indian, all that has really made Puerto Ricans we've been a hybrid ever since, you know, like from way centuries back, you know. And I think it's truly in our blood, you know.
No, I second all that. Honestly, that's a great answer. And I think that, you know, I think the culture in Puerto Rico, I mean, I'm just thinking of myself when I was born there, and my mom taking me to concerts and being fans of, like, you know, Puerto Rican artists, and my dad was always been a huge salsa, you know. He always, anytime Fania or Gran Combo was playing, so like we're huge cheerleaders for like performing arts, you know what I'm saying? So we're very embracing, you know. Like when I was 5 years old, my parents put me in like this Coro de Niños de San Juan, which is like this after school traveling choir, you know, like so it was just, it's like instilled in us, like so I think it's like without them pushing, it was like we start training early without even you know, like I remember going to Menudo concerts, you know, and me wanting to be like Menudo, and my parents championing that and being like, yo, like, you want to try out for Menudo, you know what I'm saying? Like, so
it's great in Puerto Rico. You can go to a corner and be like, necesito un conguero, and like 10 congueros come up. Like, bro, everybody does music. Like, it's crazy. Everybody sings. Todo el mundo sabe armonía. Like, it's like, it's second nature. You like, it's not uncommon that you go to, like, for example, in Christmas, you know, that, you know, that's approaching, right? Las parrandas puertorriqueñas, you know, like, bro, there's always musicians and everybody sings in key, in tempo, like, eso no falla, you know?
It's in our blood.
That's really funny, because you're just like touching a nerve when it comes to my own family, because my dad, who grew up dirt poor, still grew up with a guitar, and like his you know, his brothers still had like their instruments, and you know, even he's a terrible singer, he still swears that he could have been a great salsa singer. You know, it's a part of the heritage, you know. It's funny.
I'm sure there's so many cultures that maybe parents see performance, like music, is like no, don't do that, that's not gonna take you, you know what I'm saying? I feel, at least in what I know, my surroundings and growing up, like I never got told no, you know what I'm saying? Like they were always like, so I think a lot of Puerto Rican families kind of like embrace that, and that might have something to do with it.
I think that your guys' answer was spot on. I think that is a really good kind of summary of it. So I mean, let's quickly talk about what you guys have coming up. I know, if I'm not mistaken, y'all are working on a EP that we should be expecting shortly.
Yeah, that's right, man. We kind of took the last year and a half to put these group of songs together. That it's weird, man, because this album, which is it's called Wild Americanos. It's the name of the album. It's actually one of the songs in the album, and it's really cool because we had like these group of songs that in the beginning that we didn't know where to put and how to put them together. You know, and this goes with the story of me telling you, like, we didn't even know they were Coast City songs, and and next thing you know, like, we were putting together these group of songs that when we looked at it, we're like, yo, these group of songs really all fit together. It's like this wild card. These like really dope alternative Latin R&B songs that have been sitting here for a minute because they didn't necessarily fit with like the last EP. So then we pretty much kind of went back to a lot of those, reproduced them, rewrote some stuff, and then rewrote a few new songs to kind of like complete it and just put this like beautiful group of songs together. And EXO, you know, it's the first single of 6 songs right now that are going to be on. You know, we shot videos to pretty much the whole album already. So we're excited, man. We're excited. We're releasing the next one pretty soon. You know, we got a whole plan like ahead. So it's like, you know, the throttle is like stuck
So what are we expecting, like maybe early next year for the release of it?
So we're going to be releasing every six weeks. We're going to be releasing a new song. So right now we have, you know, EXO that we just released.
Yep.
Just stay tuned for the next one.
I love it. Well, guys, it's been a pleasure getting to talk to you. Where can people follow you on social media so they can tap into all that you're doing?
Everything is under Coast City. You know, our IG, we're super active on our Instagram, so that's under Coast City. You know, our TikTok, we're trying to like build our TikTok now. You know, so that's under Coast City too. Facebook, YouTube, check out all the videos that we have on YouTube. YouTube is actually Coast City Vibes. But basically we're the most active on IG, and obviously you can find all of our music at all, you know, your favorite DSP, Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, Tidal. So whichever one you prefer, we got all the tunes in there, so make sure to check them out.
Dope. Well, guys, it's been great getting to connect with you. Best of luck with the new project. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Dope, man. Thank you so much for your time, bro.
Absolutely. Man, big shout out to my guest this week, Coast City. I definitely enjoyed that conversation. Make sure you go check out their music, the latest single, EXO, of course, available everywhere right now. And before we get out of here, of course, as always, let's end on some positivity in the form of a positive quote. Now, this week's quote comes to us from Paulo Coelho, and it says, "None of us knows what might happen even in the next minute, yet we still go forward because we have faith." And I love that quote. I think it's very representative to the moment that we're living in right now, all that I was discussing at the top of the show. The reality is things are looking scary. They're looking a bit bleak. But we have to have faith that at some point, some way, somehow, things will turn around for the best, right? That at the end of the day, good people will prevail. And that's all we could hope for. And we just have to walk in faith and continue to do our part. I know that it feels like nothing is changing, and reality is not much is changing, but that doesn't mean we stop walking. And when I say that, I mean, that doesn't mean we stop participating in what's going on in this country. I know a lot of people feel let down, disenfranchised, and a lot of people of color saying, I'm not going to participate in voting from now on. And that is just not the solution. I know it feels like, what's the point? But you still have to make your voice heard and have faith that some way, somehow, someone will step it up and try to, correct things, fix things, and do right by us at some point. That's all we can do, is keep the faith and keep on walking. Now, with that said, thank y'all so much for tuning into today's episode. I appreciate y'all, all the love, support, the consistent feedback. It is greatly appreciated. I will catch y'all next week with a whole new episode. Until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you then. Bye.